There we go. Perfect. Perfect. Great.
Okay. We start discussing the halachas of Hachanah. Yom Tov is almost upon us, and on Yom Tov, one of the biggest shaylas that always comes up is Hachanah. There's this Isser, D'Rabbanan, to prepare from one day of Yom Tov to the next. One day of Yom Tov to the next. It applies even on Rosh Hashanah. For some reason, we all remember that the statement of Gemara that Rosh Hashanah is one long day, but the world of practical halacha l'maisa doesn't factor in that much. So there's an Isra Hachanah. Now the problem with Hachanah is that there's no clear guidelines because it all has to do with your kavanah. The exact same action for you is mutter, for me is aser, for me is mutter, for you is aser. Hachanah is not only on malacha, it's even non-malacha if you have the wrong mindset. What does that mean? For example, if I'm taking my soup out of the freezer on the first day of Yom Tov in the morning, it could be mutter, and for you it could be aser. Or vice versa. Let's explain. We're going to use the soup as a very simple example. You cook soup before Yom Tov, and you're having a meal the second night. So if you take the soup out of the freezer this second night after davening, it's never going to be warm. So when do you want to take it out? You want to take it out the first day. So if you take it out the first day after Rosh Hashanah davening, you come home at 1:30 in the afternoon, you take out the soup. It sits on the counter, and if it was for the next 3 hours, you're not using it. Is that a chana? What are you really doing? You're preparing for the next day of Yom Tov. So it seemingly would be forbidden. However, is there a potential possibility that you might use this soup today? The answer is definitely anyone with kids. The answer is of course. The soup is sitting on the counter and it's slowly defrosting. And what happens late afternoon? The kid's hungry. Perfect. The soup on the counter. Give him some soup. So as long as there's a potential that it might be used on day one, it's going to be allowed. Hachanah is innocent until proven guilty. Only vadai, I'm doing something for tomorrow, that's forbidden. So in the world of Shabbos, we have it very often. Shabbos afternoon, why am I washing the dishes and putting them away? I'm just doing it for tomorrow because I don't want to clean tonight. Maybe you're doing it because you don't want your kitchen to be a mess, etc., etc. But often it's very clear that why you're doing it is for tomorrow, that's forbidden. But anytime it's an unclarity, we're not sure, maybe for today, maybe for tomorrow. And that's why it's all telling your kavanah. If you're going to take out that soup and you're going to leave your house and come back tomorrow, and then it's clearly why you're doing it for that night, that's going to be forbidden. But as long as there's going to be the potential to use it, it's going to be allowed. Which is the reason, if you want to know when's the best time to take the soup out of the freezer. So sometimes people think it should be as close to possible. So right when they're going to shul for mincha, on the way out, they take it out of the freezer. That's the worst time to take the soup out of the freezer. Why? Because when you take it out then, it's a block. Is there any way you're going to use it today on day one? Absolutely not. So when are you doing it for? Tonight. That's going to be a problem. But if you take it out in the morning, now it sits on your counter, and if there was, now you could easily use it on day one. So in the world of Hachanah, we'll give more examples as we go along, is every time you're doing an action that's for tomorrow, it's forbidden. But if you ever need to do an action for tomorrow, for the next day, you have to ask yourself, wait, maybe I'm going to use it today. Maybe I'm going to give the kids food. Maybe I'm going to be hungry myself in the late afternoon. And that's the reason why is when you do it earlier in the day, it's much, much easier. Now, let's say you messed up. You forgot to take out your soup. You come home from davening, you eat the Suda, it's 3:30 in the afternoon, and your wife says, oh, shoot, the soup. What do you do now? So now the fact that it's Yom Tov and not Shabbos saves the day. Because on Yom Tov, you have a fire. If you wanted to eat that soup in a half hour, could you? Of course. Just take a pot, put the soup in the pot, put it on the flame, and you can eat it in a half hour. So because it's Yom Tov, you can have a lot more liberty. If this was a case of like a Shabbos to Yom Tov situation, it would be much more difficult because now you don't have a fire to heat things up on, it would be much more difficult. And the last case that we'll conclude with is what about putting things into the freezer? Someone actually asked me this morning, that's what this all got me on my brain, is Shabbos after the Friday night meal, you finish eating, and you have soup, and your wife says, I want to put the soup in the freezer. 1 second, why are you putting the soup in the freezer? So, if the answer is, because I want to save it for next week, well, that's called Hachanah. You're now preparing on Shabbos for after Shabbos. However, what's the perhaps real reason she's putting it in the freezer, which is going to save us? It's because it tastes fresher. At least that's what everyone says. I have no clue if it's true, but that's what everyone says. It's fresh. Yeah, he got it. He's gotten this one before. Quickly put it in. It's going to stay fresh. No, but not when it's hot. It has to first cool down and then go directly into the freezer. So if it's going to stay fresher, that's called to save a hefsid. If you're doing it to save a hefsid, that's also going to be allowed. So putting it into the freezer usually is going to be okay because you're saving for a hefsid. And that is our soup preparation on Yom Tov. So just a quick reminder, when we're thinking Hachanah, when we're on the first day of Yom Tov, if you're on Shabbos, you always have to say, why am I doing this action? It's not malacha, I'm good. No, I'm doing it for tomorrow, it's a problem. But as long as there's going to be a potential that you could use it on today, it's going to be okay. Or, second answer is if you're doing it to prevent a loss, that's also going to be okay. And Amir Hashem tomorrow we'll discuss more scenarios.
What about simple?